Imagine just going to the grocery store, right? You buy all your food, walk outside, and then you just give every single bag away to a stranger on the street.
Right. Just completely emptying your fridge.
Exactly. Emptying your bank account, standing there on the sidewalk and just waiting for the universe to magically make you rich.
It sounds completely absurd when you say it out loud.
It really does. But, I mean, welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we are unpacking why millions of, highly intelligent people fall into this exact kind of manifestation trap.
Yeah, and the crazy part is being exceptionally smart might actually be the #1 thing keeping you broke.
Which is wild.
Mm.
So our mission today is to look at the hidden logic of wealth creation. We're getting into the raw psychology of money and what it actually takes to build an abundance mindset when you're literally starting from zero.
And this is such a profound shift in perspective. We spend, so much time culturally obsessing over the aesthetics of wealth, like the flashy cars or the idea that you need a genius-level IQ to navigate the markets.
The whole money talks, wealth whispers thing, right? Everyone is focused on the loud part.
Exactly. We completely ignore the quiet, foundational behaviors that actually generate the capital in the first place. So today, we're totally dismantling that illusion.
But really quickly, just to set the ground rules before we get into the mechanics here, this deep dive is strictly an exploration of wealth philosophy.
Right. Based on the real-world business mindsets from our sources today.
Yeah, so this is not financial advice. It's not investment advice. We are not giving you a blueprint for your personal stock portfolio.
Oh, definitely not. We're analyzing mental frameworks, not telling you what to do with your paycheck.
Exactly. So let's jump right in. You were talking about the intelligence myth. Why is being smart a disadvantage?
Okay, so to understand this, you have to look at the most pervasive myth out there. The assumption that you need this superior intellect to win financially. There's a story from the entrepreneur in our source material that just perfectly highlights this.
Oh, the 2016 meetup story, right?
Yeah, exactly. So back in 2016, she was attending this business meetup. She was trying to get her very first venture off the ground, making basically zero money at the time.
Just massive imposter syndrome, I imagine.
Oh, completely. She's sitting in the audience, just trying to absorb everything. And this guy gets up on stage to speak.
And he's not exactly like the next famous tech billionaire.
Not at all.
Yeah.
By her account, he didn't seem like a visionary. He actually seemed completely average. Honestly, maybe even a bit foolish.
Okay, so he's up there, seeming kind of clueless. What happens?
Well, he announces to the room with genuine frustration that he just cannot figure out how to break past $400,000 a month in revenue.
Wait, 400,000 a month.
A month.
That is, I mean, hearing that number when you're making zero, that forces you to reevaluate your entire life.
Exactly. She said her entire paradigm just shattered right there in her chair. She literally walked out into the hallway, called her dad, and said she was never working a normal job again.
Because she realized she was smarter than him.
Right. She realized she was objectively more intelligent than this guy on stage, so there was no logical reason she couldn't generate that kind of money.
That's fascinating. So the takeaway wasn't like arrogance, it was just realizing that business is a game of mechanics.
Yes, exactly. That speaker wasn't a genius. He probably didn't even have a crazy work ethic, but he understood the rules of the game, and most importantly, he wasn't paralyzed by his own brain.
Okay, I love that. It's like having a sports car, right? You've got this massive engine, tons of potential power,
Uh-huh.
but the emergency brake is permanently pulled because you're terrified of getting a scratch on the paint.
That is the perfect analogy.
But I do want to push back on this a little bit, because if you just act blindly, if you just hit the gas pedal while your car is facing a brick wall, you're just going to crash.
Right, obviously.
So where does this philosophy draw the line between, useful action and just reckless stupidity? What about your internal mindset? Can't you just manifest the wealth?
Well, that's the critical distinction. It's not about being reckless. It's about overcoming what we call the action paradox.
Action paradox.
Yeah. When you have a high IQ, you're uniquely equipped to see every single potential risk. You see the macroeconomic headwinds every way a deal could fail.
You see the brick walls from miles away?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you also start hallucinating brick walls that aren't even there. And that overanalysis creates complete paralysis.
So the average guy doesn't even see the 99 ways it could fail.
Right. He only sees the one way it could succeed, so he just takes this step. To win the game, you actually have to be willing to look a little bit foolish.
You have to step into the arena before you have every single variable mapped out.
Exactly. Which brings us back to that manifestation trap you mentioned with the groceries.
Yeah, the grocery store.
Ugh.
Because a lot of people realize they need to take action, but they try to skip the hard work by just relying on their thoughts.
We are so bombarded with messaging about like wealth consciousness
Mm.
and manifesting abundance just by changing our beliefs.
Right, and that's exactly what the entrepreneur from our sources tried to do early on.
She did. She fell right into it. She read all this popular literature telling her to act as though money was already abundant.
Oh, fake it till you make it energy.
Yeah, that the universe responds to your vibrational frequency or whatever.
Yeah.
So she took it literally. She walked out the grocery store, saw an unhoused person, and just gave away every single bag of groceries she had just bought.
Which is incredibly nice, but also...
Also terrible for your own survival.
Yeah.
And she kept doing it. She started aggressively donating what little cash she had left, thinking this sheer display of abundance would compel the universe to reward her.
It's like she's trying to bribe reality, just forcing this feeling of wealth. Did it work?
No. She kept giving her resources away for weeks, waiting for the cosmic return on investment, and she just kept getting broker and broker.
Wow. So what snapped her out of it?
Her future husband actually saw what she was doing and gave her this brutal reality check. He told her, point blank, that money does not discriminate based on your internal monologue.
It doesn't care if you feel abundant.
Exactly. It doesn't care if you're terrified or confident. The market only respects the physical value you produce. The universe doesn't care about your thoughts. It cares about your hands.
It cares about your hands. Man, that completely flips the self-help narrative. You don't change your beliefs to change your behavior. You change your behavior first.
Right. And the beliefs eventually catch up if you just do the exact same daily behaviors as a successful operator, making the cold calls, analyzing data. You'll generate capital even if you have imposter syndrome the whole time.
Behavior is the only metric the market can actually measure.
Exactly.
Which brings up a really uncomfortable reality. If action is the only way, you have to be willing to get your hands dirty. You have to kill your ego.
Oh, the ego is the most expensive liability you can possibly hold.
Especially starting from the bottom.
Seriously. The material we're looking at emphasizes how shame is basically the ultimate wealth killer. People get degrees, or they reach a certain age, and they build this identity that says, I am above this type of work.
Right, they get trapped by their own self-image.
Yeah. And there's this great story from the entrepreneur's early career about this. She was trained as a personal trainer, but she needed money during an unpaid internship.
So she took a side job, right?
Yeah, she shifted to working as going as a hike guide at this local resort. So one afternoon, she's guiding this tourist who is severely out of shape.
Okay, setting the scene.
And the tourist actually wanted to hike alone, but had to have a guide for liability reasons. So they're walking, and the tourist looks at her with genuine pity.
Oh, no.
And the tourist says, I am so glad people like you exist who are willing to do this kind of menial work because I could never bring myself to do it.
Wow, that is the kind of condescension that would make me just quit on the spot.
Yeah.
Just out of sheer humiliation.
Right, it was meant to be demeaning, but her internal response was totally immune to shame. She thought to herself, I am willing to endure this grunt work right now because doing this is exactly what ensures I will eventually be infinitely wealthier than you.
That is such a powerful mindset shift.
It is. She realized that doing the unglamorous, embarrassing work is what gives you the widest surface area of opportunity. Grunt work isn't an identity. It's a stepping stone.
The only real shame is letting your ego keep you stuck.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's play this out. You swallow your pride, you do the grunt work, you focus on behavior, and it works. You start making a little money.
Right.
The classic advice we all hear next is, clip your coupons, save every penny, put it in an index fund for 40 years. But that doesn't really fit this aggressive wealth building we're talking about.
It doesn't fit at all. This philosophy aggressively rejects the idea of saving your way to extreme wealth. Frugality has a mathematical ceiling.
You can only cut so many expenses.
Exactly. Instead, the focus is on building what they call the OSH fund.
The OSH fund, I love that. Walk us through how that actually works.
So when she finally started making real revenue, she didn't buy a flashy car or upgrade her lifestyle, and she didn't lock it all away in a retirement account either. After clearing her debt, she calculated exactly how much money she needed so that if her entire business burned down tomorrow, her basic living expenses were covered.
Just long enough to rebuild from absolute scratch without starving.
Yes. The purpose of this money wasn't to generate compound interest. Its entire utility was psychological security.
I see. So it's not like a mattress stuffed with cash that you're going to retire on. It's more like a financial Kevlar vest.
That is a brilliant way to frame it.
It lets you run out into the line of fire, take these massive entrepreneurial risks, and know that even if you take a direct hit, you survive.
Yes, because the moment you put on that Kevlar vest, the cognitive load of survival just vanishes. You stop operating from a state of scarcity.
Because when you're terrified of missing rent, you make really fearful short-term decisions.
Exactly. But with that fund, you unlock a completely new tier of creative aggression. Because she had that security floor, she was later able to comfortably take $4 million and deploy it into a new acquisition. And then drop another $3 million into a software startup. You don't hoard cash to get rich. You stockpile cash to buy the psychological risk tolerance you need to make asymmetric bets.
That is incredible. And you know, that Kevlar vest of security is exactly why we do these deep dives. We want to arm you, the listener, with mental frameworks that protect your downside and elevate your thinking.
Absolutely.
So hey, if you're having an aha moment right now, do us a huge favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive. It really helps us keep bringing you these insights.
Yes, please do.
But okay, let's look at the dark side of this. You take the leap, you wear the Kevlar vest, you put in the work, but then the waiting game begins.
Oh, the painful silence.
Right, months go by, you're putting in all this effort, but the financial return is just zero. Why is the feedback loop so painfully delayed at the beginning?
Well, this is perfectly explained by the Dunning-Kruger effect. And you have to understand this to survive the early days. Humans expect linear growth, right?
Yeah.
1 unit of effort equals 1 unit of pay.
Like an hourly wage.
Exactly. But enterprise value is exponential. The entrepreneur from our sources operated at a net loss for her first 2 solid years.
2 years of losing money.
Yes. But after those 2 years, she went from 0 to $27 million in just about 30 months.
That is a massive, sudden explosion of value. So what is actually happening under the surface during those 2 silent years?
Skill stacking. The Dunning-Kruger effect shows how we start on Mount Stupid. We overestimate our competence because we just don't know anything yet.
Right, ignorance is bliss.
Then reality hits, and we plummet into the valley of despair. We realize how insanely complex business actually is. But while you're in that valley, you are quietly accumulating skills.
Copywriting, sales, basic coding.
Yes, financial modeling, behavioral psychology. You might need 20 distinct skills to run a successful operation, and having 15 of them might yield $0.
But once you get that 20th skill...
The entire ecosystem synchronizes. The growth isn't luck, it's the delayed manifestation of all those compounded skills.
It reminds me of the story about that famous coffee chain founder in our sources. He apparently didn't draw a single dime of salary for 17 years.
17 years.
He was quietly borrowing money from his paper cup supplier just to make payroll. 17 years in the valley of despair. How do you survive that without quitting?
You have to fundamentally shift your metric for success. You stop chasing money and you start chasing capability. Capital always hunts for the highest quality asset.
Okay, break that down.
If you're mediocre, you have to chase money. If you are undeniably excellent, money aggressively chases you.
Right. So how does someone practically transition from chasing money to magnetizing it?
There's a great case study from when the entrepreneur was still a struggling personal trainer. She was frustrated because she couldn't figure out marketing, she didn't have clients, while other trainers had waiting lists.
Right.
A mentor told her to stop handing out flyers and just focus entirely on becoming the single most effective body transformation specialist in her city.
Just become undeniable.
Exactly. So she entered this grueling fitness competition. She used her own physiology as her ultimate case study. She optimized her nutrition, training, recovery, everything.
Until her results were just unarguable proof.
Yes. She stopped trying to convince people she was good and just became the proof. And the moment she did that, the friction of getting clients vanished. She had way more demand than she could handle.
Because excellence reduces friction for the buyer. They don't have to guess if you're good.
Precisely. If you want to survive the silent years, become obsessed with mastering your craft, become the undeniable #1, and the capital will naturally reorganize itself around you.
But you know, this sits in direct opposition to everything on the internet right now. Everyone wants to skip the mastery phase. The holy grail right now is passive income.
Oh, the passive income trap.
The idea that you buy a course, set up a system, and make money sitting on a beach without being excellent at anything.
Our material puts a massive warning label on this concept.
Yeah.
People drastically underestimate the highly advanced active skills you need to manage passive vehicles.
I see people fall for this all the time. They buy a cheap rental property thinking it's passive, but they basically just bought themselves a low-paying job as a property manager.
Which is exactly the horror story our entrepreneur shared. She thought her business was too labor-intensive, so she bought a low-tier rental house to get checks while she slept.
How did that go?
Terribly. Horrific tenants, catastrophic property damage, crazy legal liability. Management companies wouldn't even service it.
Oh, man.
It took her over a year of intense, stressful labor just to sell the property, and she took a $20,000 loss.
Wow.
The lesson was clear. Asset allocation and risk modeling are active skills. There's nothing passive about investing if you don't know what you're doing.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here. A legendary investor, one of the most successful ever famously, said that if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die.
Right.
So we do have to transition to passive leverage eventually, right?
We do. But pop culture conveniently cuts off the first half of that philosophy. Before money can work for you, you must first put in the relentless, active work to generate the capital and the skills to deploy it.
Ah, so active learning is the mandatory prerequisite?
Exactly. Passive returns are the delayed reward for active mastery.
Okay, so the sequence is non-negotiable. Active value creation first. So how do we actually scale that active income? We only have so many hours in a day.
The algorithm for extreme wealth creation is simple, but really hard to execute. Your compensation is directly correlated to the complexity and severity of the problem you solve.
Okay.
There's a famous tech billionaire who bases his whole portfolio on this. He doesn't build trivial social media apps. He builds infrastructure for multiplanetary logistics and renewable energy. Harder problem, bigger reward.
Sure, but multiplanetary physics is out of reach for 99.9% of us. How does that apply to normal businesses?
It applies at every scale. Think about the founder in our sources who built an SMS marketing software. It was functional, but the barrier to entry was low. 30 other companies did the exact same thing. He made a comfortable living, but it wasn't revolutionary.
Okay.
Then, he shifted to a much harder problem. Formulating a new category of protein bar.
Wait, formulating a food product sounds way less complex than coding software.
On the surface, maybe. But food science is notoriously difficult. At the time, protein bars either tasted terrible, were full of empty calories, or caused severe stomach issues.
Yeah, they were like eating chalk.
Exactly. So he spent years engineering a formula that tasted like candy, had great macros, and completely eliminated the digestive pain. He solved a puzzle that massive conglomerates couldn't crack.
And what happened?
He sold the software company for a few million. But that protein bar company, he sold it for hundreds of millions.
Wow. The reward magnified because the problem was so much harder.
Exactly. And a key part of solving hard problems is pain removal. You get paid for the volume of pain you eliminate for the user. Think about a personal trainer versus the engineers who made modern weight loss drugs.
Oh, that makes so much sense. The drug leverages biology to bypass the need for willpower,
Right.
while the trainer relies entirely on the client's finite daily willpower.
That's the exact mechanism. The trainer solves the goal, but the client still has to endure immense daily friction dieting, sweating, time commitments.
Right.
The biomedical engineer solves the exact same goal, but they evaporate almost all the friction. The user takes a localized injection, and the biological desire to overeat just disappears.
Which is why the pharmaceutical company makes billions and the elite trainer makes six figures.
Exactly. You get paid for the pain you remove.
Okay, so let's synthesize all of this. You kill your ego to endure the grunt work. You build your Ushert fund for that psychological Kevlar.
Yes.
You survive the Dunning-Kruger Valley by stacking skills until you're undeniable. And you scale by solving the most friction-heavy problems you can find.
Perfect summary.
But this brings us to the ultimate kind of sobering question of this deep dive. What happens at the very end?
Oh, the finish line.
Yeah. What happens in your brain when the enterprise is sold, the wire transfer hits, and you finally have the wealth you spent a decade bleeding for?
The reality is actually really jarring. The entrepreneur chronicled the day she finalized the exit of her first major company. The monumental check cleared her account, the exact number she had anchored her whole identity to.
And did she feel amazing?
Her visceral reaction was absolutely nothing.
Wow. Really?
No wave of euphoria, no spiritual enlightenment, just the quiet relief that a highly stressful transaction was over.
That has to cause a severe existential crisis. You sacrifice your health, your time, your relationships for 10 years, and the view from the summit doesn't change how you feel inside.
It forces a brutal recalibration of what money is. If money is your master, you'll just have an insatiable void. Money's a terrible master, but an unparalleled servant.
Okay, so how should we look at it?
She uses the framework of viewing wealth simply as a hammer. A hammer resting on a workbench has no morality. Staring at it won't make you happy. It's just stored potential energy.
It's a tool?
Right. The tool only gives you satisfaction if you already have a blueprint for the house you want to build with it.
So the pursuit of the hammer itself is totally hollow. The joy comes from actually building the house.
Without question. That's why, after she got the money, she didn't retire to a beach. She immediately used that newly acquired hammer to finance her next, much bigger enterprise.
Because the happiness wasn't in the bank balance.
Exactly. It was in the continuous evolution of who she had to become to create that value. Vanity metrics are terrible fuel. You have to cultivate a genuine romance for the friction of the process.
Which perfectly brings us full circle. The loud, flashy obsession with money, the manifesting, and the ego is the ultimate trap.
It really is.
True wealth creation is this remarkably quiet internal process. It's focusing obsessively on the inputs, the grit, the skills, reducing friction for others. And then the financial return is just the whispered, inevitable byproduct of you being undeniable.
That is the definitive paradigm shift. Building wealth is an inside-out game.
It truly is. And as we wrap up today's analysis, I want to leave you, listening right now, with a really provocative question for your own life.
I love this part.
If the frameworks we unpacked today are true, if extreme wealth just amplifies your existing internal state, and a giant check won't magically fix a lack of purpose, what is the actual void in your life that you're secretly hoping money will fill?
That's a deep question.
Are you truly seeking capital, or are you actually seeking autonomy, validation, or safety? Take the time to define the specific house you are trying to build, because once you have clarity on that blueprint, picking up the hammer to do the actual work becomes a completely different experience. You might just uncover what your actual life's work is meant to be.
So true.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We deeply appreciate you choosing to spend your time exploring these concepts with us. If today's conversation challenged your thinking, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on what we unpack next. Until next time, keep building.